The following program contains graphic descriptions of violence and may include disturbing content. Viewer discretion is advised. Welcome to another gripping episode of Evil Exposed Killers. Tonight we uncover the terrifying story of Dean Arnold Corll, a man who hid his monstrous nature behind the guise of a friendly neighborhood figure. Known as the Candyman, Corll lured young boys with promises of sweets and friendship, only to subject them to unimaginable horrors. Join us as we delve into the chilling tale of a predator who operated in the shadows of Houston, leaving a trail of devastation in his wake. This is the story of Dean Corll, a man whose crimes shocked a nation and revealed the darkest depths of human depravity. Dean Arnold Corll was born on December 24, 1939, in Fort Wayne, Indiana. His early years seemed relatively ordinary, with little to indicate the darkness that would later consume his life. Corll was the eldest of two children in a family plagued by a troubled marriage. His parents, Mary and Arnold Corll, divorced and remarried multiple times, creating an unstable environment that left a lasting impact on young Dean. In 1950, Mary moved the family to Houston, Texas, where she and her second husband, Jake West, started a small candy business called the Pecan Prince. Corll, still a teenager, was actively involved in the family business, working long hours making candy and assisting with deliveries. He became known around the neighborhood as the Candyman, a nickname that seemed innocent at the time, but would later take on a far more sinister meaning. Despite his outwardly polite and quiet demeanor, Corll's personality began to show troubling signs. He was known to be reserved and introverted, with few close friends. He kept much of his life private, and this secretive nature would eventually mask the horrifying acts he was about to commit. In 1964, Corll was drafted into the U.S. Army, where he served as a radio repairman. However, his time in the military was short-lived, and he was honorably discharged after just 10 months. Corll returned to Houston and resumed working at the family candy business, which had by then become a staple in the community. It was during this period that Corll's dark desires began to surface. He started to befriend local teenage boys, many of whom were drawn to him by the free candy and the lure of an older man who seemed genuinely interested in their lives. Corll would invite these boys to his apartment, offering them alcohol, drugs, and a place to hang out. But beneath this seemingly friendly exterior lay a predator who was preparing to act on his most depraved impulses. In 1967, Corll met 12-year-old David Owen Brooks, a boy who would later become one of his closest accomplices. Corll groomed Brooks over time, showering him with gifts, money, and attention. Brooks, coming from a troubled background, was easily manipulated by Corll, who used his influence to draw Brooks into his increasingly twisted world. By 1970, Corll had moved into a small apartment in Houston's Heights neighborhood, where his dark activities began to escalate. He started luring young boys to his apartment with promises of money, drugs, or simply a good time. Once they were inside, Corll's true nature was revealed. He would restrain his victims, subjecting them to unspeakable torture before finally ending their lives. Corll's methods were chillingly systematic. He used a plywood torture board to which he would tie his victims, rendering them helpless. Corll would then proceed to carry out his sadistic fantasies, inflicting pain and suffering on his captives. Once he had finished, he would dispose of the bodies, often burying them in a rented boat shed or discarding them in remote areas around Houston. As Corll's killing spree continued, he enlisted another accomplice, Elmer Wayne Henley, in 1971. Henley, like Brooks, was a teenage boy whom Corll manipulated and groomed into participating in his horrific crimes. Corll promised Henley money for each boy he brought to him, and Henley, desperate for cash and approval, became a willing participant in the abductions and murders. Between 1970 and 1973, Corll, with the help of Brooks and Henley, was responsible for the abduction, torture, and murder of at least 28 young boys, though the true number of victims may never be known. The boys, who ranged in age from 13 to 20, were often from broken or troubled homes, making them easy targets for Corll's manipulative tactics. Throughout this period, the community of Houston remained completely unaware of the horrors unfolding in their midst. Corll was able to maintain the appearance of a normal, if somewhat quiet man, who ran a local candy business. His charm and seemingly generous nature allowed him to blend in, masking the true extent of his depravity. The nightmare finally came to an end on August 8, 1973. On that fateful night, Henley brought two teenagers, Timothy Curley and Rhonda Williams, to Corll's apartment. Corll, enraged that Henley had brought a girl into his home, breaking the unspoken rules Corll had established, became violent. In the early hours of the morning, Corll attacked Henley, threatening to kill him along with Curley and Williams. In a desperate act of self-defense, Henley managed to grab Corll's gun during the struggle and shot him 6 times, killing him instantly. The man who had terrorized Houston's youth for years was finally dead, but the full extent of his crimes had yet to be revealed. The night of August 8, 1973, marked the end of Dean Corll's reign of terror, but it also unleashed a torrent of horrors that shocked the nation. After Corll's body lay dead from 6 gunshot wounds inflicted by Elmer Wayne Henley, the young man who had helped Corll carry out his horrific crimes began to reveal the unimaginable truth. Henley, in a state of shock and likely grappling with the gravity of what he had been a part of, immediately confessed to police that the man he had just killed was responsible for the murders of numerous boys. Henley's confession led to one of the most chilling discoveries in American history. Henley led the authorities to a rented boat shed in southwest Houston, where Corll had been storing the bodies of his victims. What they found inside was beyond comprehension. The shed contained the remains of 17 young boys, all buried in shallow graves beneath the dirt floor. The victims had been bound, tortured, and then brutally murdered before being discarded like refuse. But the boat shed was just the beginning. As Henley continued to cooperate with police, they uncovered more burial sites, including a beach on the Bolivar Peninsula and a wooded area near Lake Sam Rayburn. The total body count reached 28, making Corll one of the most prolific serial killers in American history. The discovery of the body sent shockwaves through Houston and the entire nation. Families who had reported their sons missing years earlier were now faced with the devastating news that their loved ones had been brutally murdered. The community, which had once seen Corll as a quiet, friendly figure who handed out free candy to neighborhood children, was horrified to learn of the evil that had been lurking in their midst. As the gruesome details of Corll's crimes came to light, the public was gripped by the sheer scale and brutality of his actions. Corll's methodical approach to murder, his use of a torture board, the careful burial of the bodies, and the way he manipulated young boys into becoming his accomplices, painted a picture of a man who was not only sadistic, but also deeply calculating. Elmer Wayne Henley and David Owen Brooks, Corll's teenage accomplices, were arrested and charged with their roles in the murders. Both Henley and Brooks cooperated with the authorities, providing information that helped to locate the victims' bodies and piece together the timeline of Corll's killing spree. The trial of Elmer Wayne Henley began in 1974 and was a media sensation. Henley was charged with 6 counts of murder, and his defense argued that he had been manipulated and coerced by Corll, who had a powerful influence over him. However, the prosecution emphasized Henley's active participation in the abductions, torture, and murders of the victims. The jury found Henley guilty on all counts, and he was sentenced to 6 consecutive life sentences. David Owen Brooks, who had been involved with Corll from the beginning, was also tried and convicted of murder. He received a life sentence for his role in the killings. Both Henley and Brooks remain in prison, their lives forever tied to the horrific crimes they committed under the influence of Dean Corll. The case of Dean Arnold Corll, the Candyman, left a lasting scar on the community of Houston. The victims, mostly teenage boys from troubled or broken homes, were often overlooked by society, making them easy targets for Corll's manipulative and predatory behavior. The revelation of Corll's crimes also highlighted the failures of law enforcement and the community to recognize the signs of a serial killer operating in their midst. In the years following the discovery of Corll's crimes, the families of the victims struggled to come to terms with the loss of their loved ones. Many questioned how such a monstrous individual could have gone undetected for so long, preying on vulnerable young boys without raising suspicion. The case also led to increased scrutiny of how missing person cases, particularly those involving young boys, were handled by law enforcement. Dean Corll's story serves as a chilling reminder of the evil that can hide behind the most ordinary of facades. A man who was once seen as a friendly figure in the community, known for handing out candy to children, was revealed to be one of the most sadistic serial killers in American history. The legacy of his crimes continues to haunt the families of his victims and the city of Houston, serving as a stark warning of the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of seemingly normal lives. The story of Dean Arnold Corll, the Candyman, is a harrowing reminder of the evil that can hide behind even the most unassuming of masks. His crimes left a community shattered and families devastated, with a legacy of pain that endures to this day. As we reflect on the lives lost to his horrific actions, let us remember the importance of vigilance and compassion in protecting the vulnerable among us. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the darkest corners of human nature. Stay tuned for more stories where we expose the truth behind the most notorious killers. Until next time, stay safe, stay vigilant, and remember, evil often hides in plain sight. Please like and subscribe to Evil Exposed for more riveting stories.